Hi guys, my name's Seb Tudor, I'm the man on the Silver Mountain, and welcome back to Paladins. Now today, they've done some changes to characters, and also some other things, which we'll go over in a minute. But characters most specifically, and some of these I've already done videos on, some of these I haven't, I don't think, just yet. But I want to go over some of these changes in the shooting range, just so that firstly you can see what the changes are, because some of these are quite impactful. They make a lot of difference to the characters, but also because some of them are just bizarre, and it seems to be a very kind of almost arse backwards way of changing some of these characters, because it really seems to shift things off in the wrong direction as far as what I can see. And I've had this problem with Paladins before. I have done a video on some of these problems before that I'll be taking a look at now. But the only reason that I want to keep bringing these up is because this is a game that I actually really enjoy. It's one of the only PvP games that I've actually found myself really getting into. And that's because, for the most part, I much prefer my cooperative games, personally. Rather than the PvP focused ones, but also this one's got enough of a kind of build system to it, enough variety in the styles of play that are, or at least have been available, that it's been engaging enough to hold my attention for long enough. You know, it's not something that stands out as something necessarily completely different from, you know, other games, but it is something that has very much stood out to me as that I've just sat and gotten invested in, you know? And so as a result, I'm bringing up these issues again and examining some new ones as well, not because I think the game is crap, not because I think the game is bad, but because I actually want to see this game do well, and I feel like they're doing themselves a disservice so far. You know, it's the I complain because I care. Same with some of the other games that I've complained about, you know, or that I've raised issues about. I'm not going to be to reserve kind of objective analysis of what I'm looking at just because I'm in favour of a thing. But first off, let's talk about something that I am just straight up not happy about. And that is the VIP system, because again, they've added some more stuff. Like, I quite like the new Nightmare Horse. That looks kind of cool. I mean, I have no issues with how good that looks at all. But I feel like the VIP system... Whoops, what's going on here? Let's get rid of that. The VIP system, as I said when Hannah and I first took a look at it, is just a more extreme version of the cash store. The cash store, at the moment, that they have here, is pretty much you either buy stuff directly, you know, or you go and get it through chests. And here it's a case of, well, if you play the game for long enough, if you log in every day, then you get the crystals. If you play for long enough and do enough, then you get enough gold, and then you can buy the various packs. Like, the most expensive packs are the ones with the stuff, you know, the most stuff in it, which at the moment is the champion skin chest, because it's got just so much stuff in there. But everything else, you know, you could play for a week, I think. I think a week is like 50 crystals, I want to say, maybe. I should have looked at the beginning there. But like, you can unlock some of these within a week, and you can unlock some of the others in 2 if you play like every day, or at least if you log in every day. And that makes sense, because then it's like either you're spending a little bit of time logging in and saving up and developing what you want, same way that I had to for the Grover skins and things that I wanted, or you can just splash cash on it, and that's fine. You know, it gives you the 2 ways of doing it. However, here, you can either play, like, I've played a little bit more since, go away, Pip. I played a little bit more since I sat down and took a look at the system for the first time with Hannah. And I'm, you know, I've played maybe a few evenings here and there, and I'm up to about just under 3,000. And that's with the picks from the first week of the Paladins Premier League, where it was 100 points per kind of per win. And I'll admit, I wasn't maybe the best informed, and I made some poor picks, but I still got some. And so I've modified the rest of my my picks after that. But it's still like it's either a case of you play for a stupidly large amount of time, or you have to spend like 12 quid straight up. And that's nearly as much in and of itself as was paid for the Founders Pack when things first kicked off anyway. So, you know, it's arguably asking a lot when they already had a system like this in place. And it doesn't sit particularly well with me. It seems very much like just a significant cash grab for not very much. But anyway, let's actually get into the shooting range and take a look at these champions that I want to take a look at today, because there are a couple that they seem to have just completely subverted what they were aiming for with the character concept to begin with, in favour of some of these changes that just don't seem to make a lot of sense to me. And so I wanted to bring them to you guys and analyse these a little bit. But yeah, we will do. Okay. So I think, who are we going to start off with? Let's start off with the one that's happened most recently. Androxus. That's fine, doesn't matter what we pick. Androxus has been changed. He is still basically the same character in all ways, apart from he can punch people in the face instead of fanning the hammer. Why? I don't know. I've not taken the time to actually take a look at the stream where they announced this, the patch preview. But I can only assume it's because they felt that the lack of accuracy... Like, hold on, I'm stood maybe 15, 20...
The void claims its own.
She was here, I was here. That, I mean, it's not even melee, guys. It's and it does more damage than... It does 700 damage, so it does more damage than just a single shot does. In which case, my question would be, why have they done this? Why have they now made Androxus... I mean, is this to encourage Androxus being closer range? Because people still try and snipe with him because they think he's McCree? You know, is that the case? Because... shouldn't be. You know... a couple more signifiers, a couple more things in his skill write-ups to actually give him give us a proper measurement of where he is and what he's supposed to be doing would surely be better than just making Androxus of all people the only melee hero in the game. The only proper melee hero in the game. The other alternative, though, give everyone a melee. It's one of the main criticisms of this game generally, is that if someone gets in close... If you're not a character that works well at close range, you can't hit them, you can't strike them, you can't try and get away, you just have to deal with punching them. Or with trying to shoot them, rather, and not punching them. You could still quite happily leave all of the other characters that are more melee. For example, Talus with his punch. You know, could be left as he is if you give him another additional melee that... all it does is deal some damage to potentially polish people off or move people away. Same with Overwatch. Overwatch has a melee function for everybody just because. And they actually have melee, like true melee heroes. The thing that bugs me about this is that now Androxus for the most part has been about kind of sneaking round behind people and then getting within range and blowing them away. And the Fan the Hammer was a nice way to kind of... or Defiance, I think it was called, was a nice way to just polish people off. Is this still called Defiance? It is still called Defiance. But it was a nice way to just polish people off if you were within range and you were able to just, like, pick them off, fan the hammer, if you were accurate with your shots, you know, if you hadn't given yourself that much of a margin for error. Now, though, I feel like the way to play Androxus more will be to dash in kind of reversal whilst you're right there, and then just punch them to polish them off. Like, it's moved a flanker that was more about actually flanking into someone that is probably going to charge right in and just punch people in the face. You know, it seems to be moving him outside of his role some more, which is odd to me. It doesn't make an awful lot of sense. But let's get into the next champion. Now, a lot of the other champions that we've actually seen having like big changes made to them, in a lot of ways, actually seem to be the tanks more than anyone else. And so as a result, I want to take a look at Ruckus primarily, because, you know, Ruckus, he's a frontliner. He's supposed to be on the point. He's supposed to be doing his thing. And as a result, survivability was a thing for Ruckus. You know, he needed to be able to stand there and take it. So having a personal shield that he could use for himself, as well as then a shield that he could project onto other people, that made him a really potent and useful kind of tank. But now they've removed his personal shield and replaced it with rockets. I feel like the way that they've started doing some of their design is that they've looked at other games, prominently Overwatch, and they've seen characters that they feel they have an analog with in this game, and the changes that are being made to them, and they're just following suit. D.Va gets rockets. So does Ruckus here. You know, it's when he didn't need more damage. He's a tank, for God's sake. He was able to plow people down incredibly fast with his guns anyway, as long as they got into close range. I mean, with headshot damage as well, a couple of seconds of sustained fire on a Fernando there with pretty significant health there, and he falls over, and that's it. In which case, why the hell did we need more somewhat insignificant damage, by the way? Splash damage of 250 per rocket, so what, 500 across both if both of them manage to actually hit. You know, what's the point? Why remove survivability? This is the problem that I have with what they're doing to tanks in this game, because we've had Fernando's survivability here, which is what I complained about last time. They reduced his cooldown. With his legendary card for his shield, they made the shield infinite and they reduced the cooldown. But even reducing the cooldown by, what, I think it's 7 seconds? That's still an 8-second cooldown. That's still 8 seconds that I've got to wait before I can help my team again. And that's not with the shield breaking either, that's just me turning it off. So if I'm resource managing, if I'm trying to help polish off an enemy so that then we can kind of move forward, so we can advance, if I'm trying to make sure that the person who's taking me out, be it a Sky over here or whatever else, who's causing me problems, is out of the way so that I can keep my shield up and look after people, then why on earth am I being punished for that? This is what I said last time. And so the changes that they've made for Fernando here, with just the little alteration to his shield's recharge based on, I mean, this is an older change as well. So if I take this down now and it just doesn't work. If I go to maximum Cronus, it only brings it down by 2 seconds overall, to 6 seconds. And in my opinion, that's still too long, considering that it's happening every time the shield drops. You know, there needs to be more reward, more kind of for awareness and for resource management within your character. But as we're talking about tanks again at the moment, let's talk about Barak, and this is a problem that I discussed last time. There's a reason why at the moment everyone's taking Barak with just the turrets that don't miss, because he's been turned into Torbjorn. Whilst now, I've got that they've added a, let's just go back to loadout quickly. They've added a 3-second reduction to his barricade.
Erecting a barricade.
But it still takes forever to recharge, because it still takes 10 seconds to recharge after it's gone down, because it only recharges after it's gone down. I can't push and move with that. No one can, because it's too much of a downtime. You reduce that down again and you're still looking at 6-7 seconds, which is then maybe slightly more doable, but still leaves you open because it only starts the cooldown after the shield has dropped. Which means either someone has to blow your shield away, or if you've moved off over here, I've now got 10 seconds before I can help my friends round the next choke. And that tiny alteration to him through his legendary card there isn't enough. But let's... Nope, didn't want to click that. But let's go to one that they made very significant changes to on the front line up here. And that's Torvald. Now, Torvald originally was a person who could protect his friends, like so, and he still can. But the other point of him was that he had so much health and he was so well shielded that he could sit on the point and anyone within close range could not move him, could not fuck with him. It was only a case of either CCing him off the point or killing him that actually meant that you won out against him. Now though, where before the way to escape a Torvald was just to run away, now I can let's see how far I can go before they turn white. Okay, so the ones at the end there turned white now, and with no damage drop off. 200 a hit, fast firing. Like, the one weakness that he had has been removed and been replaced with damage. Whilst his main strengths, his shielding, his health has been dropped. His shielding has been diminished and changed to a different skill. His nullify and his beam have been changed into, or his disarm and his beam, I should say, have been changed into one ability. It seems like they've compressed him into being too focused on damage for the role that he's in now. He's still potent, but he's potent because he's able to kind of overreach from his original position that he was put in. And now it's, I'm going to run away from a Torvald because he can't get me. Nope, he can chase me and still take me out. The only thing now that really impacts Torvald negatively is CC, and beyond that, it's a case of he's just easier to take out anyway, so just kill him. Like the issue that I have is that they are turning tanks into damage dealers. They are turning their alternative to barrier tanks into damage dealers, or shield tanks rather, into damage dealers. Because we've got Ash, who is basically a mix of Barrick and Fernando, updates that would have probably been welcome in either of those two heroes, but put into one. We've had Barrick, who had his shield nerfed because of the recharges. We've had Fernando, who's always had a crap shield because of the way that he's punished for resource management. We've had Ruckus, who had his sustainability reduced, seemingly to just replace it with more damage. Makoa had his shell nerfed, but Makoa is actually probably the only one that still stands out as being kind of fairly workable, because the difference is if you keep if you don't take the legendary card that turns it into a deployable shield, that shield shell that you can move with, that moving controllable shield, is probably worth the extra recharge time overall. Not to mention the fact that his hook here, his anchor, has some of the best CC and directed CC, especially in the game. And so, taking a look at the tanks again, Barrick got nerfed. Ash really probably should have been an update for 2 existing characters. Fernando hasn't really been given enough love to make him securely usable. Ruckus, in spite of his frontline role, has had his survivability reduced in favour of providing more damage. Makoa, only one that's still usable because the trade-off was in his shield and things is worth it. Inara, still, they increased her range, but her damage is still not great. Her survivability is still strong, but she is very much a positional tank, and that doesn't always work. And then Torvald, who has been completely changed off a point-sitting, shielded nightmare for another team into someone with a huge amount of reach and can impact the team from wherever. Now, I'm looking at the roster we've got here. We've got some really good characters that have been very nicely designed, very well designed. But then we've got characters like Lex or Skye, who I feel bad about playing because they are too strong. Lex's ultimate, where it's a team kill for pressing a button, was something that wasn't in this game for the most part. You might have the odd direct kill early on, like Drogoz' ultimate, where it's an instant kill when he flies straight into you. But otherwise, you wouldn't have an instant kill based off one ability. Whilst now with Lex, with Skye especially, that's what they deliver. Entire team kills. And Skye, people were complaining that she wasn't survivable enough to get in to use her ultimate when it was a ground-placed thing. I say good. That means it's high risk, high reward for using her ultimate to wipe an entire team. But now it's a thrown deployable, and it allows her to stay as far away from possible, so that that high risk, high reward strategy is no longer high risk. And as I've said, I really like this game. It makes other games that are like it, in my view, seem like there's something missing from them. Because here you've got the customization, you have the ability to play, the ability to have multiple builds for different situations depending on who you're playing with. As I've talked about in regards to, say, the ways that I play Maldamba, when I'm with a team that I work well with and when I'm with just a random team. And so this roster that we have here has great characters in it, it has some great ideas in it, but then it seems like the characters that are actually pretty sound in what they're doing, like Ruckus was in a good place. Barrack, before they nerfed his shield, I felt was in a good place as he was able to actually do his job. And yet, they're taking characters like that and bringing them down a peg instead of just bringing them up to a baseline. When you've got some heroes that are standing out as just plainly more powerful, for example, Ashe at the moment stands out as a really powerful tank because she's got elements of other tanks that were successful, but she does it better than they do. Like, when you've got that scaling in power between characters of the same thing, that's where you get very narrow metas. And that's where you get really, really shitty kind of attitudes towards things in your game. In a game like this, where you have build customization and potentially quite an expansive range of combinations per character, and especially an expansive range of combinations per team, then surely the way to do it is to bring people up to a baseline instead of nerfing them into the ground each time. You know, it doesn't make the slightest bit of sense when you've still not done things that would actually help characters and make more sense for characters. Like, for instance, what I was saying in regards to Genos, with his being able to select characters the same way that if I go to... Why isn't that working? I'm not sure why my E isn't working. Here we go. Maybe they can't be lifted. But having this kind of UI element on Genos for selecting people with his grab ability would be so useful for also making sure that he's healing the right person when everyone is stood in a crowd. But they've not added things like that, little quality of life things that would actually make more sense to characters that work perfectly well. Instead, they have chosen to entertain themselves by having Androxus rock up with a punch when I've seen I've seen Androxus played fairly regularly. He sits in a very kind of solid position, but apparently his initial defiance that allowed him to shoot and work at a kind of standard range wasn't good enough, and so they needed to get him closer. It doesn't add up to me, and so maybe I'll take a look at some of the ideas and actually go back and watch the patch preview and re-examine some of these things. But as I've said, there are some characters here that all seem to be based off the same elements, and they seem to be running out of ideas, and they seem to be taking them from other places instead of just leaving the ones that work fine and like bringing up the ones that aren't working particularly well. And then in regards to new characters, instead of mashing together characters that kind of don't really work too well together when it really comes down to it, they made some changes to Talus here in regards to his rune of travel, considering that they've tried to make such a focal thing of it, so that they removed the base healing, or they increased rather the base healing on it, so that he the card for healing on his rune of travel isn't such a must pick every time. But it's still not like the best by any stretch. Like I've played Talus a few times since after I showed him off to you guys and went through him with you guys the first time, and quite frankly I find myself just ignoring rune of travel altogether, because my capacity for movement is, suffice it to say, enough without it. You want to give a character a punch? Fine. Give it to this guy. He already has one. Give him another one. Androxus didn't need it. It doesn't make any sense, any more sense than nerfing tanks that, in such a way that it reduces their capacity to actually do their job and fulfill their role, so their team can't rely on them as characters anymore, or as picks, without changing them into being something else. Like, it is a problem in these kind of games where you usually have an awful lot of characters that stand out as being damage centric over being the supportive or upfront roles. But it's something that this game shouldn't be struggling with just yet. They've done a handful of newer characters still, and some of these characters are, as I've said with Ashe, not really up to scratch, considering that they are just reworks on old characters that haven't been applied. Like Fernando here, he already has the ultimate that Ashe effectively has, apart from, let's go and actually take a look at it, apart from Fernando and all allies within 70 units cannot be brought down between 1,500 hit points or affected by damage over time. Okay, that's all very nice. So what's the comparison to Ashe's?
Spend my credits.
Ashe's is leap forward and plant your banner in the ground, dealing 350 damage on impact, creating a damage immune zone for yourself, and then you just sit there and remain in that area, and then you can modify that with your loadout, wherever it is. Here we go. Assert dominance now also charges faster, grants a stun, and grants allies increased damage. It's such a daft thing to me when you've got one character who has a definitively and fairly obviously weaker form of an ability. If he had the same general area effect thing that Ashe has here, then it would make more sense. If you also negated crowd control, then that would make more sense. The number of times that even though he's been immune to damage over time, he's popped his ult, and then I've just knocked him off the point with a well, Cassie was the last one we took a look at, blast arrow, or with a what you call it? Well, with this even, actually, thinking about it, considering it's right here, he pops that ult and then he goes flying and the point is mine. Yeah? It doesn't make the slightest bit of difference when his role is to sit there and hold the point and protect his team. And he might be protecting his team if they're within 70 units, but how often does that happen? If it happens, then great, but a lot of the time it doesn't. 70 units, hold on. 70 units from Sky here is about here. It's a reasonable range, but how does that in any way help people who are trying to run back to you if you've only popped it for your own purposes? The area of effect isn't all that noticeable. How are they going to keep track of where they need to be to get that benefit? You know, there's an awful lot of things that don't exist in this game yet. And it's still beta, and that's one of the reasons why, again, I want to talk about this stuff, because fixing it now whilst it's in beta, making amendments now, is exactly what they should be doing. And so one of the things that is going to be involved in that is making sure that characters can fulfill their roles. But so far the movements that they've been taking all seem to be towards just making this another game that's all about damage and removing the subtleties of kind of supporting and defending your team, which some people play games like this for. I know a good number of people who only play tank. And as a result of only playing tank in Overwatch, they play Reinhardt or Winston. In this, they play, well, usually they would like to play Ruckus, Fernando, or Barrack if any of the three of them had been left as effective choices for actually standing and defending your team. You know, I ordinarily wouldn't be playing a healer, but in this game, I have found that healer is actually what I really enjoy playing. You know, if I would definitely say from amongst our loadout here, I am a support main, considering that Grover is probably my standout character, followed by Maldamba. And then I'm a big fan of Genis, Ceres, and Ying as well. You know, that's very much where I've kind of sat in this game. And yet, those are all characters that, while some of them have significant damage, most of what they are there to do is support the tank. And yet if the tank can't do their job properly, if the frontliner can't do their job properly, then the entire team potentially collapses and cascades behind them unless they've got enough of a different method, be it damage or be it 3 or 4 healers to cover the team. You know, a full support meta is something that I have seen a couple, or not a meta, but a full support team is something that I've seen a couple of times and has worked really well. But again, those are very much the exceptions, and there are still an awful lot of very aggressive teams that just don't take tank anymore because it's not worth it, because none of them actually have any kind of value to certain maps and to certain situations. You know, especially some of the newer maps where lines of sight get easily blocked, like the quarry map. That we've seen more recently in various things we've been doing. Barrack just doesn't work there. Why? Because whether you're taking him as to attempt to defend, there's not really as easy a time of doing that anymore, considering his shield isn't worth it. And if you're taking him for his turrets, as an awful lot of people do, then quite frankly, those turrets don't have line of sight enough. You are going to have to continually replace those turrets and babysit them, because otherwise they are not going to find targets to hit, or they are going to get taken out very quickly. And so he's just not worth it anymore. Same with Fernando, with his shield being so punishing when it's dropped. A misclick could potentially lead your team to be wiped just because it was at the inopportune moment and they didn't have that extra couple of seconds of setup time or recovery time. You know, Ruckus can no longer sit on a point because he gets wiped out far too quickly if people can get within range. Torvald can no longer sit on a point as capably, because if people get either close enough or manage to get around behind him, especially if they manage to CC him, he's gone, because of the alterations that they have made to him and the weakness that they have driven straight into him. Which means that for tanking, we have Inara, where she's mostly just survivable in and of herself, but up to a point she dies. Especially if she's hit with Cauterize, she's gone. Makoa, again, reasonable pick, but he is one of the more aggressive, kind of drag a person out of position kind of tanks, kind of frontliners, and he's still not there as purely defensive. He has a lot of capacity to cause harm. And that leaves us with Ashe, who is literally a mix of Barrick's, a moving version of Barrick's shield with everything else about Fernando. And again, I'm asking, why wasn't she just put into these characters and made better to make them better and functional, instead of creating her as a new character? It doesn't make sense to me. But anyway, guys, I'd love to hear what you guys have to think about this, because I realise that this may very well just be them trying stuff out. It is the beta. Hopefully they will see what happens, and they will adjust accordingly. But again, I don't think that's what we're seeing so far. I don't have I had a lot of reasonable amount of faith, rather, in high res, seeing what they had done with Smite and so on and so forth, and now coming to this game, I thought they'd be able to do a reasonable job. But it seems like where they started off really well, they're now starting to slip downhill the closer they get to release. And that's kind of concerning to me, because I've really enjoyed this game. But hey, I'd love to hear what you guys think, especially if you guys have been playing Paladins as well. Then, you know, it'd be interesting to hear your thoughts, considering that, you know, as someone that usually plays support a lot of the time, even though they've now added the notifications on the matches to say what you're missing, tank is usually especially the one that gets missed off the roster for the team. And as a result, it's like, I feel like there's a boiling down of the classes here, where everyone is slowly becoming just about damage. When, if I'm playing Ying, for instance, I want to be there to support, to heal. And so, you know, everything slowly being boiled down to damage might eventually change that, and make it a very mediocre pot of random characters that just all do basically the same thing. You know, we've already started seeing that in regards to Androxus and Lex and Xin, all basically being elements of the same kind of high moving, high damage kind of assassin-esque kind of archetype. You know, we've got the highly mobile archetypes in regards to things like Maeve and Talus, or on the damage side, Willow and Drogoz, and Eevee as well, arguably. You know, so we've got all of that. Actually, has Pip had his thing yet? Because no, they've not. I had heard that they were changing Pip's weightless as well at some point, to make him less kind of prominent as a, I'm going to run around as a flank to cause mayhem, just I've got a self-heal. You know, as many Pips still, even now, play. But whether or not that actually comes to pass or not, I don't know. But anyway, guys, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, because, as said, it's concerning to me when you have a separation between characters and between roles to make the game functional, and yet when it gets boiled down and things get nerfed to the extent that they are basically a different class, it kind of ruins the whole thing, because it just removes those distinctions. And I don't know, I don't want to see that happen to Paladins, just probably because I've enjoyed it so much and it's actually something that I've been able to get into. But you know, tell me your thoughts, tell me what you think, and otherwise I guess I'll see you in the next video, so take care. Thank you very much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, then please drop us a like, share this video, and subscribe for more. And I'll see you in the video tomorrow. Take care.